leadership is fucking hard. It's hard. I mean, like, I have wrinkles because I care and because I do hard things. If there's a challenge that's happening right now, let's look first at the things that we can control. And we can control our attitude and our initiative. And if we look back and say, am I bringing the right attitude to this discussion? Yes, no. If no, then let's fix your attitude. Let's get right there. Am I actually working hard? Am I bringing the right initiative to this thing? And if I go through those two things, then I can start to quickly determine, okay, well, if I'm bringing the right attitude and I'm bringing the right level of work, maybe I'm bringing the right level of work to the wrong place.
Today we have someone who I really am so excited that he's on the show. We have Mike Simmons on the show. Mike is the founder of Catalyst Acts. And he works with teams, organizations, and individuals to make sure that they have the clarity they need to keep making fearless decisions so that way they can hit their goals and keep moving forward. Mike, welcome to the show, man. I'm so glad that you're here.
John, thank you. I'm pretty stoked to be here and to have a conversation as always.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a surprise for you because I knew that we were doing this interview today. And I was like thinking about, okay, like I was just so excited when I woke up this morning. And so I just needed to just represent just a little bit, for my good friend, Mike Simmons, because, in the past, handful of years that we've been connected, I've been able to come to you and ask questions and get help and also get the clarity that I need sometimes just in a friend to friend peer environment. So one of my favorite people, and you do the things that you ask other people to do. You're very consistent with pushing yourself and challenging yourself, and just a phenomenal example for anyone else in the leadership space. So this is for you, my friend. So
that is, thank you very much. I now have the Be Like Mike stuff playing in the background, and the color is on brand. It's black. That is absolutely awesome. And thank you. And it goes right back to you too. I know that if I've got a question, I can ask in Slack or I can send a text message and you're going to respond to it. And I think the key for everybody out there is find your group of people who help you grow and know that you grow together. We are better together as a group. And it's because we feel confident asking questions. And if you don't have that group, if you feel like you're alone, go out there, find it or build it. It's important
100%.
to have folks you can lean on, and they're out there. John and I are not unique. I firmly believe that there are many of us out there who don't know that people are looking for help. So ask.
Absolutely. And, while we're here talking about this really quick, can you talk a little bit about the Phoenix Club that you're launching? Because that is one of these communities to where people can go and get help and be surrounded by peers, and would love for you to talk a little bit more about it for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, thanks for asking. The Phoenix Club is something that Jen and I have inherited leadership on. It started originally by a former Disney executive, Dan Cockrell, as the Perch, and it's gone through now its third stage. We're shepherding the group through its third stage. The second stage, Jody Mayberry took over as the leader of it, and that's where it became the Phoenix Club. And we're carrying it forward because the mission still aligns from a naming perspective, which is more about the bird, the mythical creature that rises from the ashes. Well, the way that you rise from the ashes is by working together, leaning on others, putting yourself out there, but even more so, it's helping others. So we rise together by helping others get better. And we know that we get better by helping others get better. So Jen and I have taken on leadership. We've got just under 40 people inside the group right now. It is a paid community. We meet via Zoom on a weekly basis. We meet in person, or have the option to meet in person twice a year. We just had an event in Orlando a couple of weeks back, our first event, a lot of lessons learned. And really what we're looking for are people who are the preneurs out there. People who want to think differently so that they can do differently, whether that's an intrapreneur and do it inside your organization, or it's an entrepreneur and you want to hire people, or it's a solopreneur and you want to do it on your own. You're a preneur, you're someone who wants to think differently so that you can do differently. You are committed to helping people grow. And if you are looking for a group of people who are aligned on that, we'd love to have you at the Phoenix Club. We're just getting started.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing. I'm really glad we got to like kind of talk about that because community is one of those things to where it always helps us, right? But until you find the place to where you can be walls down inside of that community to really get the help that you need, it's largely just a waste of time, And so, that's what Sherpa Slack is meant to be for. That's what your membership is meant to be for. And, paid or free, find the one that fits your flavor and has people in there doing similar work, because no one gets to where they're going alone on an island, right? Like you need other people. And when I was younger, like I had epic community inside of my Kung Fu community, right? Like people who would pour into me and help me and everything, but I wasn't seeking out any kind of professional community, and it kept me really stuck for a very long time. And so now I try to like provide space with the Sherpa community and everything else like that. So, but find your flavor and dig in deep, and don't go in there expecting people to come help you when you're holding all of your stuff off to the side. You gotta pay to play with like being walls down.
There are so many things to go deep on there. And I think it ties into the general conversation that we're going to have today, or as you transition into different roles. But there, you will feel lonely. You will feel alone anytime you make a shift or a change, whatever that shift or change is. I'm entering into the Kung Fu community, or I'm moving from Phoenix to Dallas, or I'm moving from an organization to another organization. And the reason why you're going to feel alone is because you're going to think that there's going to be this thing that you want to get out of that community. There's going to be a thing that you want to get out of the organization. There's going to be a thing that the organization wants to get out of you. And you're going to expect that when you move into that role, the company or the community or the group is going to expect that you have a certain level of understanding before you walk in the door. That preconceived notion that you have is going to get in the way of your ability to ask a question. And when you forget to ask that question, it's going to get in the way of your development. And this is where the testing comes from. You can go into a new group the first time, just like you go into a new school, and you can ask a question. And sometimes you can ask the wrong question and get yourself kind of isolated and excommunicated, or you're put in a different box. But if you ask the right question with a level of curiosity, a genuine interest in understanding what others are doing and what they want to do and where they want to go, and you take an interest in them first, then you'll be in a position where you'll start to feel comfortable asking the questions that relate to their experience that will help you move forward. So community is critical. It's important to test it. There are multiple versions of it. There are versions of it that are very niche and specific, like a Kung Fu community. And then there are ones that are going to help kind of enable in the margins and pull those things together and not have the same kind of echo chambers. And that's what I hope we're building with the Phoenix Club. And there's an African proverb, if you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone, right? And I may have switched that around as far as the order that those are in, but it's true. We can go really fast alone on our side, but we might be going fast in the wrong direction. And we might end up finding that we're going fast, switching directions over and over again. But when you have somebody else, and this is one of the big things for me, if you're looking for leadership, start with a mirror. If you have somebody else that can either hold the mirror or also look at the mirror with you, you can start to determine, am I actually moving in the right direction? So anyhow, it all ties together. Like we're human beings, and we all want to be like Mike. So
well, it's funny because like I talk about the mirror thing because, in my coaching, I talk a lot about martial arts, right? But really I talk about the importance of just like a feedback loop. Okay. And the mirror inside of a martial arts school is a feedback loop because, having taught hundreds of different people, like a 300-year-old martial art, there's always room for them to be like, well, you don't get it. You don't understand where I'm coming from. You don't understand why this is hard for me. I am doing it. Good. Okay. Well, look in the mirror. Now, how does it look? Right. And you can't argue with that, but you have to be adult enough to know that you need to look in the mirror, not to polish the things that you're already good at, but to be looking for the things that need the improvement.
Why do we struggle looking in the mirror?
I think it's ego, right? Like And I'm curious, right? Because we're both like older guys now, right? You know, we're not like these young studs or anything else like this, or
I
young
don't know what you're
gals out
talking
there
about,
pushing.
man. I feel super old. I have more gray hair now than I've had, I think, in years. But yeah. So go ahead. Yeah.
So I find myself turning to, okay, how am I screwing this up quicker and quicker and quicker as I get older, as opposed to casting around, like looking for like how it's not my fault and how it's someone else's fault. And like, I don't know if that's an age thing. I don't know if that's like a developmental thing. I don't know if that comes from like doing this work and being very thoughtful and intentional, or it might just be age. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, anybody could read Jocko Willink's book and Leif Babin's book, Extreme Ownership, and take out components of that will help them realize that it all does start with self. Like if there's a challenge that's happening right now, let's look first at the things that we can control, and we can control our attitude and our initiative. Those are two things that are always in our control: attitude and initiative. Attitude and initiative. And if we look back and say, am I bringing the right attitude to this discussion? Yes, no. If no, then let's fix your attitude. Let's get right there. Am I actually working hard? Am I bringing the right initiative to this thing? Am I just kind of half-assing it and going through the motions? And if I go through those two things, then I can start to quickly determine, okay, well, if I'm bringing the right attitude and I'm bringing the right level of work, then let's figure out why I'm not making the progress that I'm working toward. Maybe I'm bringing the right level of work to the wrong place. Like I'm working really hard on the wrong thing. There's a difference between watching someone run on a treadmill and run in the street. On the treadmill, their body kind of stays in the same place. On the street, the background should also be moving with them, right? As they go through. And I think as we look at it, let's look at it and say, okay, am I working really hard on the wrong things in the wrong direction? And the only way to really test that, I think, is by not only having your own set of data that you look to evaluate yourself against, but also asking others to look at that same data to help evaluate yourself against. And when you bring that to the conversation, at least what I tend to see is that the people on the other end who are coachable start to do some of those same behaviors. They start to ask some of those same questions. Am I bringing my best self to this situation, right attitude? Am I bringing the right work to this thing? And you'll see that start to carry on and multiply to others. And this gets into the whole, leading self first, then leading another individual, then earning the right to lead teams, and then earning the right to lead teams of teams, which starts to get into the organization piece. And I know John talked about the front end. It's both teams, it's organizations, and it all starts with individuals, because those
Absolutely.
are the people who are actually doing the work. So
yeah, it's hilarious that we're talking about this, because I was writing about this morning for the next book, right? And trying to encapsulate this idea that, no one follows a fraud, right? And so then, trying to figure out how to write this conversation between like these two people, so that way this idea gets passed in a way that it is helpful to other people, because it's like, well, I have to be able to do the job of everyone on the team. And, I think when it comes to individual skills, no, but when it comes to like traits and mindset, absolutely. Right. And especially if you're, I think there's like in Kung Fu, there's this element of like the hard elements, and then there's also like the soft elements, right? And the soft elements are always like mental stuff, right? And there's the hard elements of like striking and punching, and, sales is the same way, right? Calls, activities, follow-ups, closing deals. But then there's also the soft side of, your tonality, like, are you consultative? Are you putting too much pressure, and all of that stuff in there? And so I think when you're trying to coach towards those soft sides, like the EQ, the personal development stuff, you have to lead with intention, right? Because, if you're like, hey, have a good mindset, but, you're a tyrant, everyone knows that you're a tyrant, right? And everyone knows that you're not leading with that, with what you're asking of others, right? And so I just think it's hilarious, because I don't think every leader should be able to do like every job of every person on the team, but you should be able to practice those mindsets and like act in the ways that you want other people to act in those roles, right? So like, do the right thing, be supportive, be thoughtful, be intentional, different things like that. You can be intentional as a leader and show that with your actions, right? And that'll lead to other people choosing to be more intentional when they're working with you. Or you can just go around telling everyone how intentional you are, but they can see a lack of intention in your actions. And then when you're showing up trying to tell them to be intentional, it's not going to land very well, right? Because you're not leading with that. You're not leading by that example.
Yep. I think you started with nobody follows a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Is that real?
Well, I mean, I think we have to like look at like time duration, right? Because, in the thing that I'm hacking away at it in this book is I'm trying to make it a narrative, right? So like trying to write like, Mamet and Sorkin level dialogue, right? So like snappy and quick, but like when you're mentoring someone or you're being mentored by someone, the quality of those conversations is, I think, really hard to capture, right? Because it's fast and like, there's needling, but it's coming from a place of like trying, like not needling just for the sake of needling, but like needling so that you can see the blind spot and everything. And it's becoming, it's a unique challenge trying to like write and capture this idea in a dialogue, because like having been on the receiving end of it and also being in a place of being able to help some people, like as the mentor, it's like a flow state as far as like a conversation goes, right? Like time slows down and everything gets a little bit weird. And so trying to write that is uniquely interesting. But, the way that this is playing out in my head right now is the guy's like, okay, no one follows a fraud. And the guy was like, what do you mean? And he's like, okay, you're here as a new person. Do you think you could lead my team? And the guy's going to be like, yeah. And then the response is, okay, interesting. Do you think my team would follow you? Right? Because it is a collaborative effort, right? And one of the things that I learned in the military is like, don't follow, like if you're on a team of someone who you wouldn't follow in a battle, you need to go find another team to be on. Right? And then, like whenever I was younger, we're going to talk more about this here in a little bit, I was always the guy with the questions, right? And because my personality is, I need to know how it works, and I've always got a question and everything, I would often get labeled the problem child, because I would be like, okay, why do we got to do this, guys? And I didn't have the ability of framing questions in a way that made it clear that I was looking for help and not just like trying to find a crack in the veneer so that way, but that's just how I communicate. And so talking to my daughter, the other day, she's like, oh, here comes the sales questions. And I was like, what? Hold on, wait a minute. Where is this coming from? And she's like, well, you're the sales guy, so you're gonna ask me a bunch of questions. And I was like, hold on, I would like to pause for just a second. She's like, okay. And I was like, the curiosity has always been here, 100% of the time. Sales training and sales coaching has given me the ability to like ask them and make sure that they're heard the right way. But I'm not asking you questions because I'm trying to like sell dad on you or anything. I am genuinely curious about these things, and it was such a surreal moment because, I go around and I do my job now and people just appreciate how I communicate with them, right? Clean, clear, direct, right? Clear, intentional, all these things. But there are some people, oh, here's another question, and so it's unique how it shows up differently to the different people around me. Like my wife hates whenever I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. She's like, I know, asshole, and I'm like, okay, like, sorry, it's just kind of like reflexive at this moment. But, we put in all this work so that way we can be really great communicators, but then it becomes a part of you. And it sometimes is weird to other people around you. Does that happen to you? Or is that just me?
Yeah. So think about the different perspective that the person has on their end when those questions come up. There's one way to come to that and say, John's asking me this question or Dad's asking me this question because he is genuinely curious in gaining perspective, helping work through a situation, whatever the thing is. Genuinely curious. Now, there's another world where that same perspective is, Dad's judgmenting me. This is a way to judge me. He's going to judge my decision making, my perspective, my whatever, or whoever. So am I asking the question because I'm genuinely curious because I want to help, or am I asking the question because I've already got an expectation and now I'm judging the person against it? And sometimes we fall into the trap of either asking the questions from more of a judgy perspective versus a curious perspective. But the other piece is validating on the other end that the other person is coming to the discussion, looking at things, hearing those questions through the lens or through the earpiece or through the whatever, through the filter, the perspective of, is this person curious and trying to help, or are they judging me, and am I going to feel less than as a result? And those are really, really hard things to assess for in the initial interaction. You look at things like nonverbal, like John is nodding through the conversation. We're engaged in a discussion. This is a healthy discourse about stuff. It's not about, hey, I want to prove my point, or John wants to prove his point, or we want to find time to make sure our points are out there. It's, hey, let's actually have a conversation and see if we can gain perspective from each other. And I would challenge you, when you're out there and you're engaged either in community or with friends and family or whoever it is that you're talking to, how do you think they're perceiving the questions or the communication style, or what position are they coming from, and what is your position? Because I can tell you this, when I get into problem solving mode or crisis mode, I can move things through. Like if there's a crisis, someone is, and John, you've got different training than I do. There's if there's an emergency that's happening, I feel very comfortable with being able to continue to take action to keep things moving forward, not get stalled in the what are we going to do next kind of mode. Now, there are some people who will get into a panic mode and they will be, oh, what are we going to do next? And they don't have the capability to just keep things moving forward. The risk is high stress situation, stuff's all over the place. I can move right into D mode and start moving things along. That's not necessarily the situation all the time. And we've got to be aware that, hey, someone is not bleeding out in this conversation. Right. So anyhow, so I think, just think about it. How am I looking at this through their perspective, their lens versus my lens? And the tool that's helped me a lot here, I don't know if it's a tool, but it's the fundamental error of attribution. Are you familiar with that?
No. What does that mean?
So fundamental error of attribution. And this is something that we learned way back when I was at ASU. My degree is psychology. I did not go to graduate school. I have never been paid as a psychologist. It was more to work through my own mental issues to try to figure out what was going on with family and me and all that other kind of stuff. But one of the, there's a fundamental error of attribution. And the whole idea there is that if I'm walking down the street and John's walking down the street, we're walking down the same street, and John trips over a stick, middle of the street, trips over the stick. My knee-jerk reaction is, wow, John's a klutz. Now, if we're again still walking down the same street, I trip over the stick, damn stick. Like, that is a fundamental error of attribution. How do we attribute what is happening? And those happen immediately. You don't put yourself in the shoes of the person and be like, oh man, that sucks that the stick got in the way of John. It's like, why was John not paying attention? So think about the fundamental error of attribution in the communication that you have, not only with your clients and your friends and your family and everybody else, and even worse, yourself. Like that's where some of the really dangerous stuff can happen.
Man, I love that. Right, a handful of years ago, I don't remember what year this was. I was at a sales conference, and this guy was up on stage, and he was like, "We judge everyone else by their actions and ourselves by our intentions." And man, like, you know, over the years of going to some coaching sessions and seminars and stuff like this, you have a moment to where like the cup is just full, right? And you know, I've had that moment a handful of times. And so walk out of that session, and a friend of mine was like, "Hey man, we got to talk." I was like, "I just shut up. I cannot talk to you right now. I just need to sit. I need to process through this thing." Because, you know, sometimes it's like you hear something and it stings. And like, to me now, that's an indication of like, okay, this wouldn't sting if I wasn't feeling some sort of, you know, some version of this, right? Like, but the fact that it can sting me as opposed to just like, oh, that's absurd, right? If someone came up to me and they were like, John, you're a short, tiny guy, right? Well, I'm tall, I'm 6'4". So I'd just be like, okay, cool, that's your opinion. I wouldn't have any weight in it. I wouldn't be carrying it. I wouldn't be thinking about it. So then it's like, when someone does say something, or like, let's say you're scrolling on social media, right? And you see someone out here being like, anyone who does this, and like it stings you because you're probably doing that, right? And you might not even be aware of it at the time. And so I try to spend a lot of time kind of thinking about if I feel something, right? Either in a conversation or something, like, why did it even land? Why wasn't it just like in the realm of absurdity? And it usually leads me to like, okay, I need to go work on this. I need to go figure out the root of this or different things like that. But started from that line of everyone else's, actions and our intentions. And then I just finished reading Fooled by Randomness, right?
Okay.
By Nassim Talib. And he's a trader. And he's talking about how everyone is like, well, this worked because I did it. Right. And it's like, that is one potential outcome in the realm of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of outcomes. It doesn't mean that you're the catalyst, right? That you're the game changer, right? You might have just gotten lucky, And so thinking about that book and all this other stuff, I'm, try to be very aware of that. Like, why does that sting? Why do I even feel called out by that? Well, probably because I am doing a version of it. Maybe I need to go look at it and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's like, to me, that is choosing to build a mirror, right? As opposed to waiting for someone to like show it to you in the face.
What the times where I get into my darkest places, and it's happened a couple of times historically, not all the time, but and I think it happens to others as well. Why? Because we're all human freaking beings. Like, at least the last time I checked, we're all human beings, and we all have our own issues, whether we're open with them or not, whether we're vulnerable or not, who we share those with, or what kind of face we want to present. But if the path to burnout for me, or path to being in more of a depressive state for me, is I am not sleeping, I'm not working out, and I'm not eating well. If those three things are true, I'm not getting really good sleep, either because I'm not eating well, or because I'm just stressed out, or I'm not working out and I'm not working out. If those three things are there, then I'm at high risk for a situation where if I run into a scenario and someone gives me negative feedback around a thing without context, or that negative feedback will have a greater negative consequence on my side. And it can be the straw that broke the camel's back as we go through it. So what can I do to fix that? Well, one, I can be more reflective in that scenario and say, hey, you know what? And I'll do this. This will be a tool that I'll use. What really changed? So you got frustrated and you're kind of feeling burned out. What's changed in the last 24 hours? Really, what's changed? Look at the data. What's changed? And that becomes a way where you can kind of work through those pieces. But if the other thing I can do is I can go through and say, hey, let's make sure that I'm staying on top of the sleep. Let's make sure I'm staying on top of the nutrition. Let's make sure I'm staying on top of the movement stuff through checklists and systems and habits and that kind of stuff. And if I stay on top of it, I've created this shield, this kind of buffer, this protective barrier to help prevent from the negative thing that could happen in a scenario. And then the biggest one, and I share this periodically in like a statement, it's a red flag for me is when a leader inside an organization comes in and asks this question: are we doing everything that we can? Like, are you freaking kidding? No.
Everything?
Doing everything. like, there's always going to be something new that we could go in and add. Mm-hmm. But are we prioritizing the right things and doing those things in the right order to be successful? Yes. And have the confidence that we as a team are doing it. And if you don't have the perspective, if you don't have that data to help you work through your own stuff, then let's get the systems together, because I can take care of all of this stuff out here. What I can't do is control what's going on in your mind. I can't go into your brain as a leader and say, hey, make sure you're evaluating, because sometimes you'll say something out loud and it will create so much damage because you're the leader inside the organization. And that's one of the more damaging things that I think is out there, which is, hey, are we doing everything we can?
Well, I think that leads to the idea of, like, I don't like fake it till you make it at all, right? Like, and I know that it's prevalent, and I know that some people push it, and I think there's greatness about being able to show up and just be yourself, right? But sometimes, and I think this is harder in leadership, I would say, that than the other performance roles that we're going to be digging into here in just a minute. But like, I think it's harder as a leader to show up and be vulnerable, right? To talk about some of the challenges and the things that you're working in, because it's like this, like, well, let's go be the general. It's like, well, in that situation, everyone under the general knows exactly what that general is capable of, right? Because that's just how it works in that environment, And so, yeah, you got to be real with people, right? And they got to see you challenge and fail and figure it out if you want to, like, have a chance at helping them, like, do those same kinds of situations, right? If you're coming across as perfect, whether it's intentional or whether it's unintentional, like, you're making it hard for the people who are under you to fail, to struggle, to communicate, to be vulnerable and open. So, no, I'm definitely there. Changing gears wildly. So you wrote a post the other day that I love, because you were talking about all the things that you have been in your professional career, right? And I was excited and also, like, stunned, because I knew we were going to be, like, talking on this show soon. And man, I have gotten so much crap over the years for being a job hopper, right? I've waited tables, I've sold phones, investments, banking, mortgages. I've done so many things. And I know from that list, you've done a lot of things as well. You work for UPS, you've worked for yourself as a fitness coach, which I have all the questions about, and then doing everything else. When you think about your path, whether it's being an individual contributor, being a leader, or being a founder, like going out and hanging your own shingle, where do you think the hardest gap is?
Where you are.
What do you mean?
Like, where you are right now, that is the hardest gap. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's like, at the time and place when I was working through those things, it was always hardest right then. There was something hard that I was always working on. It wasn't that anything was harder than another. Like, dealing with some of the stuff that we've dealt with kids as they've grown up, those have been really hard things. Like, we ran into some stuff that we had to deal with over where we were at Phoenix Children's Hospital one year during Thanksgiving. And that was exhausting. Like, that whole piece was exhausting. What did it do to inform me in the future is that when people are dealing with illnesses with kids, give them some space, let them know that you care and that you're there, and that all of this other stuff can be taken care of in some way, shape, or form. Communicate with us around what needs to be taken care of so we can get it done. But, like, so it's all hard. The thing that changes is it's different each time. And the different thing is, okay, well, in this scenario, am I the one doing the work, or am I inspiring people to do the work? If my hands are on it, that's one thing. Maybe my hands need to be on it the first couple of times so that I can get an understanding and I can have an appreciation for the kind of work that people do. But going forward, I need other people's hands on it in order to be able to build scale. And then from there, it's how do I get feedback from those people so that I can determine, are we doing the right things in the right order, so to accomplish the mission, or accomplish the objective, or accomplish the goal? Do we have alignment? So it's all hard. The thing that I realized over my career, I probably could have left every place that I was at a little bit earlier. As I was at UPS, I was there for 7 years. At SmartForce Skillsoft, I was there for 7 years. At O'Reilly, Safari O'Reilly, I was there for 8 years. I'm now pushing almost 8 years here with Catalyst, and So I look at this and I say, okay, there's a lot of stuff that was learned all the way through the process. The biggest thing for me in the O'Reilly Safari days was that I realized I could change roles inside that organization faster if I was more open with people about the type of role that I want to have or what I want to test in or pay attention to all of the problems that exist. Now, I should have seen that in the Skillsoft SmartForce days because there was a guy that worked there. His name was Brian Witchker. And we'd always go in and start working on new projects. He was kind of like the wolf inside Pulp Fiction. He was always going in and doing something else. And the negative perspective was, hey, this guy's always got his hands in everything. And the reality, though, is there should have been an appreciation for being the person who's always going to raise their hand and go do something different because there's an opportunity to demonstrate leadership capability. So all the way through it, it's always been hard. One thing isn't harder than the other. And the next thing that you're doing, if you're constantly working to get better, is always going to be hard. So what's the other, there's a special ops saying, embrace the suck. And I didn't serve. I did some volunteer stuff with ESGR, and employer support for the Guard and Reserve. The military is extremely important to me. It was not my path, but let's embrace the suck, embrace the hard part of it. And if it isn't hard, then the next question I would say is, are you challenging yourself enough? Like if you're not out there doing hard things, what are you doing? Now, some people will go through a season where you need a little bit of a break, and the hard things are going to be more family focused than business focused, or the hard things are going to be more business focused than family, or the hard things are going to be more on self. And those are the kind of the three categories I like to look at stuff through. It's business, how do we make money? Family, who are the people that are important to us? And self, how are we working on self? And your balance in between those three are going to change on how much hard stuff you can take on, because your seasons are going to be different.
Man, first of all, for a long time, I was thinking that I could be like a top tier performer in like all these various lanes of my life, right? And that was putting a crap ton of stress on myself, right? And so then what I would do is that there was this one period where I was deciding, I was still doing affordable web with my business partner and going through this coaching and training of like learning how to be consultative and how to sell well. But there was so much mental stuff around it as well. And it's what really opened me up to being this kind of like constant learner, constant improver type of person that I am now. And so during this time, I was like, well, I'm going to play trumpet, which I'd not played since high school. I'm going to learn German. I'm going to do these things. I'm still going to Kung Fu. I'm trying to figure out how to sell affordable web to people. I don't come from the stack was so high of like everything I was trying to develop myself on and improve on. And when one of those things fell apart, they all fell apart, right? Every freaking one of them. And then I felt bad because I was like, man, like I thought I was supposed to be able to do like hard things, and then I was beating myself up, which just makes it harder to come back to it later on and stuff like that. But yeah, the concept of seasons took me a long time to get to, right? Because like I've had projects to where like I'll leave a project and I'm like, I just need some time after that. Like it got a little rough, right? And also, well, if I've not been tending these other gardens that are important to me, right? Myself, my family, my own habits and hobbies and everything. And so it took me a long time to get to the place of like being okay with like seasons, right? I didn't have a label for it. So it just kind of felt like if you're not pushing, you're complacent, And while I still hold that idea, right, I do think you're either pushing and looking for improvement, or you've made the decision that you're okay and that, you're going to continue to be okay. Like nothing is permanent, right? And so that focus does have to change, especially when you have responsibilities like a family, right? There are different things like that. So I want to go back to something because you said something in the intro and then we got sidetracked. Do you think it's harder to be an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur? Like which one do you think is the harder path to cultivate?
Again, it's the path that you're in at the point in time that you're really going to feel hard. And I know that sounds like just a shit answer. So here's the problem with intrapreneurship is there are certain aspects of it that are outside of your control. You may be an entrepreneur inside an organization who's ready to push things forward and it's really going to help move things along. But the reality is the organization is not the right fit for you. They're not ready for it. They don't want to do that thing. And that thing is going to be outside of your control. Now, on the entrepreneur side of things, if you go that route, the hard thing there is there are other people inside your business because an entrepreneur has other people inside their business. It's not just them. Solopreneur, it's on their side, and we can kind of get into that too. But on the entrepreneur side, now you've got people who are counting on you to be able to feed their families.
Yes. And they signed up for a job. They didn't sign up for a roller coaster.
That's
right?
it. And sometimes they signed up for the roller coaster because they understood that that's part of the job, and that's where the transparency and leadership is really important. So
100%.
I think they're both hard. It's a question of which hard are you interested or kind of drawn toward. Now, I think there's a lot of value in that entrepreneur role. The thing that's important is make sure that expectations are aligned across the organization around what that thing is that you're working on. And maybe you can be the skunk works version of what's happening inside this specific group. And that's cool, but everybody's got to understand, look, just what you're looking for. Throw some food down there every once in a while, maybe check to make sure everybody's still alive, but let them go about doing their work because they're going to be different. They're going to think differently so that they can do differently. On the entrepreneur side, the stress of not only being accountable to your family, but your team and your organization and your customers can be super stressful, but it can also be super rewarding too. Now, solopreneurship, I think, is even a little bit more interesting because now you're not taking on, there's so many different ways that you can bring on others in the journey to help you through 1099 and partnerships and some of the other people that are really specialized in certain areas. But they've got their own business that they're working on too. So now ideally with those pieces coming together, we're able to form like a, like Voltron. We're able to come together.
I was about to say, dude, if you're missing the name, I can just drop Voltron right in here.
Superbot. We're ready to go through and we're ready to accomplish some amazing things. Which, so there's a number of different ways to do it. I think the common denominator across all of this, as I've been thinking a bit more about, preneurship as a word, is think differently so that you can do differently. Meaning you're constantly going to be pushing outside of the margins. The status quo doesn't work. It's cool that the machine is going, but you want to figure out, hey, how can I stress this in different ways to do something a bit differently? It doesn't take away from the standard kind of the people who operate the machine and manage the machine, because that's a really important thing too. You got to keep the machines moving along. There's some others who want to go out there and just keep pushing limits. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think is more difficult, entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship?
Well, I like what you said there, because whenever I left corporate, I was burned out, right? And I really hated the idea that my role was just kind of more of like a glorified touchscreen. Do you want this thing? Yes or no, right? Like, I didn't really feel like I had the room to be discerning. Didn't really feel like I had the room to do what was like really actually right for people. And I was just burned. Like I was like, okay. And then I took a job as a field sales role selling pedicle screws. And it was like, that was when I hit the wall. That was when I was like, okay, I do not have what it takes to do this job well. And that's when I sought out some coaching and found this path and everything, and when I started my business, it was from a place of like, well, I'm not going back to that. Right? I can't go back to that, because it felt like a big step backwards, right? Not from just like a status thing of like, running my own thing or being a small business owner or anything. It just felt, environmentally speaking, that, I'm still going to have those same struggles, those same concerns and everything else like that. And so I think knowing what I would know now, I probably would have put on a better search looking for a role to walk into that did allow me some room to figure it out and change things and look for the improvements. But being the problem child, right? On, well, John, you just want to figure this out so that way you don't have to go like sell, in the stuff that I would hear. I was like, well, I can't go back to that, right? Because like I am a strategic person. I do need to think it through. I do want to be efficient and effective in the role. And it just kind of seemed like I wasn't going to be able to find that inside of a job, right? So instead, I'm just going to go out here and do my own thing. But here's the really fascinating part. I'm a much better improver than I am a creator, right? So, thinking back on it now of like all these things that I have built, like if I just bought, a franchise or whatever, I'd be so much further along. Would I be happier? Probably not, right? Because, rules and all that other stuff. But, thinking about like lane of greatness and where am I really great? I'm really good at finding the improvement. I'm really good at pushing myself through improvement. Being hyper creative, oh man, like, and that's what being out on your own really is like, when I started, wasn't to be a sales coach. It was just to help people with CRMs because I'd had really great coaches. And I was like, there's no way I'm at that level. I can't do that, right? So I'm just going to build a feedback loop in the form of a CRM so that way people don't lie to themselves. And then, when the pandemic hit, we started doing placements and recruiting for people. Someone was like, well, are they going to sell the way that you do? And I'm like, you don't want me. I'm a farmer and all these other things. And this guy was like, well, I've really appreciated how you run this call. I would like my person to do it very similar. And I was like, oh, and they're like, can you do that? And I was like, I'm going to have to build it, right? Because like, I've read all these books, I've gone to these seminars, right? I've, like drinking from every fountain that I thought had like pure value in it. But I take what I take and I use what I use, but I'm not dogmatic to like any one situation. And so I was like, okay, how do I actually sell, right? And so sitting down and kind of working through it and like, ending up with like Sherpa as the framework that we now teach people, like, it's funny now when I talk to people and I'm like, oh man, this is so great. This is so great. Like, I bet this was easy. Oh no, like trying to figure out like, what do I stand for? What am I going to teach? What am I not going to teach? What have I learned along the way that didn't help me, like has made me jaded and kind of an asshole and having to walk some of that stuff back? Like so much harder for me because I for a long time I struggled with like even the idea that I was a creative person, right? Because I'm not very artistic, but I can be creative in proving that by running this business and doing the book and doing all this other stuff that I've done was kind of like a big challenging thing, So going back, I think I probably would have done a much deeper dive, a much deeper search to try to find a team that I could go into or an organization that I could work with that allowed me some room to figure it out. But it just didn't seem like an option at the time. So
the language that you use that I think is really important for people to be careful about is the go back. What does go back really mean? And this is one of those areas where I get into like knock down or drag out arguments with people, specifically when it comes to sales process stuff, because everybody has a different, someone hears sales process and their definition of what sales process is going to be a bit different depending on what their experience is. If you're a sales rep who's a high performing sales rep, your view of sales process likely is the approach that you use to go out and sell perform. That to me is sales rep approach. And that to me looks like monopoly. It's wash, rinse, repeat. It's 4 steps. We got to work through this looping process. We repeat it. It's not a closed loop. It continues to move things forward, but that's sales rep approach. Another process that people will look at is process for the purpose of forecasting. That for me, I like board games, chutes and ladders. Things are going to move forward and they are absolutely going to go backward. New person's going to come in. Someone's going to have to go back to the beginning for whatever reason, whatever challenge happens. And that's more like, again, chutes and ladders. Everything moves through stages. And as you move through each of the steps, probability of sale increases. The one that I think a lot of revenue professionals, depending on what their background is, tend to miss on is the game of life piece, which is the customer journey. What's the actual journey that a customer is going through in their process, their decision-making process? And where I'll get into the knockdown, drag out fight is I look at this as game of life. And one of the cool things about the Game of Life game is you never really go backward. You meander. It's kind of like being on a path. It's not like those experiences disappeared. So you didn't go backward. You didn't hit the reset button. Someone didn't have a time stone and kind of shift things backward in time. You actually are in that same place with, in a different time, in a different context, with different experience. And what you might be able to do is add even more value to the part of the decision or part of the thing at that point in time. So this backward piece, you're constantly moving forward. You've just moved forward and now are going through another phase that was similar to the phase that you did before, and you've brought so much else with you. So give yourself some freedom. Give yourself some...
For sure. Yeah.
A shift. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, and thank you for the clarity point on that, right? Because, sometimes, Jocko talks about this in his book, right? The person who can step off the line has perspective that everyone on the line does not, right? And whenever I was moving up in Kung Fu, I was already an instructor, but I was about to hit this new level of instructorship. And you get to learn the emergency techniques, right? Which are like held off until like the final stages of your path because, you're going for damage, really what you're doing, right? And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, finally, I'm here. I get to learn the cool stuff, right? And my teacher, he's sitting down, he's talking to me one day. He's like, why are you so excited? And I was like, man, this is the stuff I've been waiting for. I'm going to be able to, just like foaming at the mouth for this stuff almost. And he goes, can I tell you something? And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, Sifu. He goes, so you have your first form, right? You have your second form, your third form. This is the fourth form, right? And I was like, yes, sir. Right. Just like waiting, and he goes, second form will beat first form. Third form will beat second form. Fourth form will beat third form. But really good first form, like top tier first form, will beat second form, third form, and fourth form, right? And he goes, the reason why these are called emergency techniques is because you only use them in places to where you have been compromised. So, if you're really on your game and you're never in a spot to where you're actually compromised, you will never use any of these techniques. Right. And so he's, and the wisdom of that only showed up like obviously years and years later, because it wasn't the thing I wanted to hear. I wasn't ready to hear it and everything else. Like I just wanted to like eye gouge people and stuff like this, And so, but now thinking about it, like I think about that line all the time because I put a lot of practice and a lot of effort on like fundamentals, tonality, cadence, asking good questions, not like, well, here's this one trick that works in this only one super specific situation and it's not going to apply anywhere else, because like really great fundamentals of being able to manage a conversation is going to take you further than a bunch of BS techniques that like you think you have, but you don't really know how to hold well or anything else. Because my teacher also used to say that when you give someone technique before they're ready to use it, it becomes a crutch. So it is this very interesting thing. And I know people who will stay in an entrepreneurial lane that doesn't fulfill them, because the idea of like stepping out of that entrepreneurial lane, taking a role or going to work with a team or something else like this feels like failing at being an entrepreneur, right? And so like, I think that's more of like how you're holding your identity more than anything else. But if you're not ever allowed to like take a step back, even for just like, well, let's look around for a minute, you're right, you're probably not doing yourself like a whole lot of favors.
Yeah. I think but really love the focus on fundamentals, because if we get ourselves overly focused on the fundamentals, good things tend to happen, and you can get really creative with how you apply those fundamentals. And fundamentals for me are things like problem solving and decision making. Do we have a process? Do we have tools? Communication. Do we have a process? Do we have tools? Go to market. Do we have a process? Do we have tools? Achieving results. Goal setting and execution. Do we have a process? Do we have tools? And if we do, and we're aligned on those things, now we have integrity across our team and across the way that we operate. And this gets into some of the stuff that you talked about early on in the conversation, which is if you've got a leader out there who is saying something but then doing something differently, they no longer have integrity. There's a lack of alignment. That lack of alignment creates a lack of integrity. When that structure gets put under force, it will break down. There will be risk that it will break down. And if it doesn't break down, it isn't because it might be because of something in the market that was happened that nobody knew was going to happen. I think about being an up and coming sales leader at Zoom in March of 2020. Could you do anything wrong in the next 6-month period? Like, you're really just like, hold on and let's go. And now that's not anything to take away from the leaders who learned a lot and drove business in that environment. That is not the success of the business in that time period was probably not driven by a strategic decision that you made, unless you happened to be in a certain region in China at a certain time period in time that whatever. But like it wasn't the decisions that you made other than the decisions to get out of the way and just enable and empower your team to kind of move forward. So
absolutely.
Awesome,
and
awesome
that
stuff.
Like, I love all these like old mantras that I'm now old enough now to really see value in, but like luck favors the prepared. Right. Yeah, so sure. That sales leader at Zoom, if he was just completely in a reactive stance and just waiting for stuff to happen to him, like they wouldn't have capitalized on the market share and the growth that they did. Right. So while, right place, right time does matter, being in the right mindset and the right mode for that time obviously matters. Right.
Absolutely.
And whenever I was playing poker is where I learned this line, because my poker coach was like, hey, luck favors the prepared. And so then there for a while, like I would piss people off, right? Because like I'm trying to put them on tilt and everything. And so I'd play like crazy hands and stuff. And then sometimes you hit, right? And you always make a big deal when you hit, so that way people know that you're like crazy and a maniac and everything. And so I remember this one time I ran down this guy in a pot, won a big pot and everything. And he was pissed. He was so mad. And I had like 10-5, like a complete garbage hand. But because I was the aggressor and just kept putting pressure on people, I had control of the situation. And so when it comes 10-5, right, like I'm just going to win a big pot, But part of it is like knowing my spots and knowing how to keep control of that situation, but also being in a good position with the lights on is a super important part, right? Because you can make speculative decisions and marginal decisions from a place of like ego that don't serve you, and that leads to everything else that it leads to. Switching gears, because I know we're coming up on time, and honestly, dude, I think we could probably talk for about 4 days and like get super deep. But what I would like to kind of talk about for just a moment is you're a revenue guy, right? In my vision of you, right? You do lots of other things, but in my head, it's like, man, Mike's a revenue guy. And you've kind of pivoted your business a little bit, which I really appreciate, because I get so frustrated whenever I talk to people and they're like, John, like I'm a founder, I'm a CEO, you're the salesperson. I don't even need your help, and it's like, okay, cool. How clear are you on your goals and your activities that hit those goals? And, and then it all falls apart and unravels. But the big flaw in that thing is leaders don't think that they need the fundamentals of sales to run good conversations, to like practice good discovery, to really bring people into the conversation and get them excited about it. And that's honestly kind of the premise of this next book, is that like bad leaders can hide for a while, bad salespeople cannot, right? You're either meeting expectation or you're on a pip or on your way out the door, So can you talk a little bit about this pivot and trying to get people to be more aware that they need the soft skill side of conversations and communication, no matter what they're doing in the organization?
It may absolutely be batshit crazy, and this may not work out, and it may completely wreck my family's finances and all of those things. Like all of this stuff, it could go horribly wrong. And there are ups and downs where it feels like it is going horribly wrong. The thing that pisses me off is being known as a revenue guy. An organization will bring me in sometimes to evaluate their leadership team to help support firing a VP of sales.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
People inside the organization, right?
Yeah.
And then what you do is you go into the organization, you evaluate things, and you realize, you know what? That revenue challenge that you're experiencing is actually a culture challenge in disguise. And culture starts with leadership. and leadership starts with self. So if we go all the way through there, we say, okay, well, how can we help people be better leaders of self? How can we build better culture inside our organizations? And the way that I like to do it, or the thing that I think can be super helpful here, is improving things like problem solving and decision making, goal setting and execution, communication, go to market, those 4 kind of areas. So the 4 pillars for me in the business: leadership, culture, revenue, execution. Known as a revenue guy, that's typically where I'll be brought in. And then we'll start to look at how can we enable and empower the organization to think differently and do differently. That becomes the culture piece. The way that we can do that is by helping people be better leaders of self. And the way that I can do that is by helping people get better at problem solving, decision making, goal setting, execution, communication, and go to market. Now, the beauty of all of this is those are all revenue tools that I've rebranded. The problem solving tool is an account plan. If you look at it, it's a hexagon. It is an account plan framework. What problem are we solving inside the business? Who has it? Who's impacted by it? Who cares about it? Why does the problem persist? Why is it important to solve? That's the top part of the hexagon. If you haven't answered those questions, you haven't earned the right to start to get into how, but too often we want to jump into how. Well, if everybody inside the organization understands this is how we solve problems, we actually have a framework that we use to solve problems. Now, when we come together as a leadership team or as a team of teams inside the organization, we can actually ask the specific question for a specific line on that hexagon to determine are we actually aligned as a team on that thing: the who's, the what's, the why's, the how's, the when's, and our timeline. The problem that I think exists and what frustrates me is we bring people into organizations and then we don't enable and empower them to go out and do the work that we ask them to do. We communicate based on our bias or our preconceived notions, and we tell them how they should be doing things, or we look at activity metrics or whatever the thing is that we're looking at. If you give people tools to help get better at problem solving and decision making, goal setting and execution, communication, and go to market, then you start to have better conversations with people inside the organization. Your thinking starts to change. Then the doing starts to change. Your evaluation starts to change. It becomes less about my bias and my perspective and more about the team as a whole. And we're all doing things off of the same playbook or off the same sheet of music. And I believe that if you agree with the idea that that there's a lack of leadership inside organizations, that we've promoted people into roles and not given them the tools and resources to be better leaders, then there's an opportunity for you to go in and help solve for it. If you're promoting those people from within your business and you're not helping them be better leaders of self at the front line, then you're creating a bigger pipeline challenge inside your business, and you're going to continue to struggle. And because you're going to continue to hire people to come into those roles, those frontline roles, and unfortunately, depending on where they are in their career and what they did, whether they competed in martial arts or they competed in golf or they competed in football or band or whatever, if they haven't done those things, they may not have the systems and tools in order to problem solve, make decisions, communicate effectively, figure that kind of stuff out. And with our the deprioritization of science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, and STEAM, the arts, adding the arts in there, with that deprioritization inside schools and focusing more on test, we've reduced critical thinking across our students. Those students will one day become employees. Those employees will then not be in a position to lead. So rather than keep screwing around at the top line and trying to do these executive retreats and improving ourselves as an executive team, my thesis is your business will change if you start doing that at the front line. And why not enable and empower your team to have effective conversations, just make effective decisions, solve problems effectively as a group. So that's the evolution is really from the view that revenue challenge that exists inside your business may actually be a culture challenge in disguise. And
Absolutely.
culture starts with leadership, and leadership starts with self.
Yep. I love that, because like I've been in the room on projects and they're like, well, culture sucks, so we just need to fire all these people and then bring in new people and that's going to fix it. And I'm like, like waiting for someone else to like raise their hand and be like, hey, doesn't this start with us, right? And like as the outside consultant, you know, like while I'm known for talking truth to power and challenging and everything else like this, like I was like, no one, no, well, okay, cool. Like I'm, you know, it's such a unique situation of, you know, thinking that it's someone else's fault, right? And so I spend a lot of time talking about, you know, you can either be expectant or you can be enabling, right? But it's kind of like, you know, I talk to salespeople and largely anyone about the difference between being in a reactive stance, right? Just waiting for things to happen versus a proactive stance of at least like falling forward, right? Having pressure on the situation, feeling when things are getting out of control and being on top of it. And I feel like being expectant as a leader is kind of that same thing as being in a reactive stance, right? Versus like, okay, how can I help? How can I see this person struggling? Now, I want to flip this question a little bit, right? Because while I agree that organizations, companies, founders, owners, everyone should be pouring in the development of their people, I also think that it's on the individual to take some agency and start working on themselves, right? Like it's funny because like I'll do reach outs whenever I'm doing a placement and I'm like, hey, have a role, would love to talk to you about it. And it's funny because people are like, oh God, here's a recruiter. And I'm like, I'm not one of those recruiters, promise, right? I'm not going to lie to you or juice you. But then I also get the pushback of like, oh, do I got to buy your program? And it's like, no, absolutely not, you know, but if you're not taking any effort to upskill yourself, you're on the bottom of the pile. Like we just have to be honest about it, right? Right. So how do you, right? If someone comes to you today and they're brand new going into one of these performance roles, either sales, marketing, leadership, or like hanging their own shingle, how do you talk about the balance of like doing and upskilling yourself? And then also later, if you decide to grow a team, how do you look for that in other people?
Yeah. So the majority of the coaching I do today is inside client engagements. It's with people inside that organization. It's the same stuff that I'll do at an individual level, and I've got some different ways to do that kind of thing. So as far as the ownership piece, again, working through that, it's looking for leadership. Start with a mirror, right? Revenue challenge inside your organization may be a culture challenge. That culture starts with leadership. Leadership starts with self. All of this stuff is self. It's all back to the individual. If you are an individual who is out there and you're expecting for people to hand stuff out to you, you are not a leader of self. You're not taking the initiative. You're not doing the work to go out there and continue to improve. You're looking for a handout. You're looking for someone to do that for you. Now, depending on what your role is and where you are in your career and kind of what your aspirations, that may be fine. That's okay. Like if you want to be led by others, if you want to be managed by others, if you want to go through and just do a checklist of work, do the minimum, good. Work inside organizations where that's the expectation, that's the standard. But don't raise your hand and tell people that you want to think differently and do differently. Don't raise your hand and tell the people that you're frustrated with the leadership inside your business. Don't raise your hand and challenge everybody inside the business because they just aren't smart enough or they just don't know how to do it. Leadership is fucking hard.
Yeah.
It is. It's hard. I mean, like I have wrinkles because I care. Like, and because I do hard things. It's not, gray hair because I've.
Yeah, we're both like 17 stressed. Years old. We just look this old.
Yeah, it just but it's hard. It's hard stuff. So give your boss or give your leader or give the others inside the organization a little bit of flexibility and some gratitude or some grace on the way that they work through things. But know that. And this comes from, I think it's a fire department thing. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to save you. You have got to take control of that situation. And if you don't take control of the situation, you're leaving it up to chance. You're leaving it up to others. So take the time and invest in self, whether that's listening to a podcast like this, reading books. But here's the other piece. you can invest in self all you want, and you can check the box and talk about all the cool books you read and quote all of the other stuff. If you're not actually doing the work and putting into practice, you suck. Like, I mean, like, John can tell me all the level 4 emergency stuff in Kung Fu, and I might know it and be able to say those words out loud, but in a situation where I get attacked, am I going to actually be able to do something? What happens when I need to put it into practice? Everything's going to fall apart. Take ownership of self, get out there and do your own, do the work. And it's worth it. When you invest in yourself, good things happen over time, over and over and over again. At a minimum, you figure out what kind of work you should be doing, what gives you energy, what has impact, what do you not want to do ever again. You just learn as you go through.
Absolutely.
You're constantly learning.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who are really into UFC, right? And they're like, well, I know, and they know the names of all the moves, they know the names of all the fighters and everything, but they're still like, man, like, I'm just going to see red. And it's like, you are not even on the level, right? Like you're going to get schooled by the first person who does not see red and has some capability. Just like, that's how that works, right? And the same thing happens in poker, right? Because like, you can know all the math and everything, but if you can't think through that mental thought process in the heat of the moment, when there's like a big call or bluff, or you're not really sure like what it is, if you have not ironed out all of that stuff in that moment, you're not going to do the math right? You're gonna have a problem. And you might have read every sales book. If you've never been on a pipeline, if you've never had to carry a bag or a quota, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to have those pressures of like, do I push for this or do I make it okay? And like, all those little bitty micro decisions, like, end up being the difference makers between someone who can do these jobs well and the people who can't. So really want to respect your time.
Even if you do it, even if you have read the stuff and you've put it into practice, you've done all the training and you have all the reps, you're still going to choke.
100% for sure.
Happen.
Yeah.
So give yourself a little bit of freedom of the choke, because the choke is going to help you get better for the next time. John, thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, dude, we're going to have to do a part-time, because like, I know you got to go. I have more stuff that I want to talk about with you real quick for 2 rapid fire questions. And then I can let you go. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. First one, what's your biggest pet peeve or mantra or lesson that's kind of being touted as like a leadership lesson that you're like, oh, this is taking us in the wrong direction? Do you have anything like that that's like super popular and you're thinking it's doing more harm than good?
The one that drives me nuts is we do things the way that this is the way we've always done it. Like, so we do this over and over again because this is the way we've always done it. It's not a growth perspective. And another one is, it's just the way that it is, or it is what it is. Like, those kind of things drive me absolutely nuts. It's not, it is what it is. It's what you accept. And I think Leif talked about it in Extreme Ownership. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And like, there are these things that we can do where we might say things out loud that we're frustrated with them. But then we let them happen. And my question, and this gets into that problem solving piece, that why does it persist, is, sometimes something may not really be that important. And if it's not that important, then let's be honest with each other and say, hey, it's not that important. Like, me carrying a couple extra pounds right now must not be that important, because I still go after the muffins when they're hanging out in the kitchen late at night. Like, there's a decision that's being made for that moment in time. So yeah, so it's more of the, yes, it's this there's that piece of frustration. The other one that's a frustration is like all of these people who have the quick fix, like the quick fix to building out your fractional practice, or the quick fix to generating your audience on LinkedIn, or the quick fix to whatever. Like, there's never, I've never found too many quick fixes or shortcuts. There's a process. So that's the kind of stuff that frustrates me, is when people try to share, hey, there's this easy button. The question I would ask is, how do they make money?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Looking at how they got there, not just like what they're talking about. Super important. Last question, then I'll let you go, man. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yep.
We will absolutely do a part two. Other than extreme ownership, right? If someone is coming into, and let's just confine it to leadership because that's where most of the conversation has been. What's a book they should read?
Oh, I have a list. So there is nothing new except what has been forgotten. Marie Antoinette. That is my favorite quote. Also is, Newton had a quote, "I see as far as I see because I stand on the shoulders of giants." Some of the giants shoulders that I stand on, Peter Drucker, the Effective Executive. I think Jim Collins' foreword to the Peter Drucker Effective Executive book is something that everybody should read or listen to.
I gotta make a note. I've not heard of those.
I do it every month. Every month I've got it. Jim Collins does his foreword to the Effective Executive. It's 10 lessons learned from Peter Drucker. And there's a couple of those things that you'll hear in a lot of the discussions things that I share, tools that I share, and one of the big ones is stop what you would not start. So if at any point in time you're doing something that you wouldn't start doing again, end it. It's not serving its purpose. Let's move forward. So Peter Drucker, Jim Collins, Stephen Pressfield,
The
War of Art, I think is
phenomenal.
Is awesome. Sun Tzu, Art of War.
Very good.
Keller, The One Thing. These are all really amazing resources. Ultimately, what they kind of come down to, and this is what drives me, is simplifying our approach so that we can identify next logical steps and start taking them. If you lack a process, build a process or adopt a process. Either one of those. There's lots of processes out there that you can adopt. You can build your own. Include reflection in that process so that you go back and view how are we actually making progress on these things? Are we moving forward? When I get into the game plan stuff, goal setting and execution through clarity and focus, there's goals, actions, metrics, and execution. Those are the 4 parts of it. The metrics piece is all about holding yourself accountable to doing the work and the work accountable to working. So we hit on a couple of things. The One Thing, some of the Jim Collins stuff, the Peter Drucker stuff. Covey is also a really big one for me. And then the Margaret Mead quote, and I'll butcher this one, but it's never underestimate what a small group of committed citizens can accomplish. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. So find your group of people. You will accomplish so much more when you work together with a group of folks. And John, thank you very much for having me on board. I did not do my book list justice, so I will send you some follow-ups above and beyond that. And it's all the stuff. It's all the stuff that's informed, where I am and how I go and where I'm growing.
Awesome, man. If someone wants to learn more about what you're doing, where should they go?
Go to findmycatalyst.com. If you go to findmycatalyst.com, you'll have links to everything. You'll be able to link out to me on LinkedIn. You'll be able to access the podcast. You'll be able to see some of the things that we're doing with the Phoenix Club and the speaking practice. Go to findmycatalyst.com and you will find everything there.